Hello everybody, my name is Garth from Myth Leather Company out of Marysville, Washington. And today we're going to show you the entire process on how we make these two-sided straps out of chrome tan leather with 0 exposed edges. And we're going to do that right now. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for all the updated videos and just click on the watermark in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. We would greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, the first step in the process for making these straps is obviously the choice of leather you're going to use. This happens to be about a 4-ounce leather. Most of our bags are in the 4-ounce range, 4.5 ounce range, maybe 3.5 to 4.5 ounce range, and then we will skive the edges as required so we don't wind up with a really large buildup of seams and such. But more on that a little bit later. But we're going to start with this leather to make our straps. Now this strap happens to have some captive hardware in there. These snap hooks will go on some D-rings later on. This is not the style of strap we're going to be making. We're just going to be making a plain bag strap, which will wind up being riveted on the bag a little later. So no hardware, no captive hardware will be required, but the process is exactly the same. The only thing you have to worry about later is when you're utilizing captive hardware like this is to actually install the hardware before you start assembling the strap. Made that mistake many times, but this is basically how we make all of our straps. This particular one it has a contrasting color on one side versus the other, and typically the black leather will be in the 2.5 ounce range. It's very thin, very buttery soft, but it's just basically as a contrast and a backer to the main article's color. And it will be the thicker leather. This was probably a 3.5 ounce to start with, that wine color. So for this particular one, I believe what we're going to do is use the same color, so it won't be a contrasting strap. It'll be the same color on both sides. So what we're going to wind up doing is skiving down the length of the strap before we start assembling it down to about 2 ounces, and we'll show you that process as well. So to wind up with a 30-inch strap, I need two 30-inch straps. So what we're going to need to do, and those would be 1 inch wide, is I'm going to need a piece of leather that is 30.5 and then 32 inches. So 30.5 and 32 inches, that's what I'm going to make. And we're going to need 2 of each. So 2 pieces for this particular, to wind up with about a 30-inch strap, is going to be 30.5 and 32. This is a 2-inch straight edge, and this is how I will maintain these exact dimensions by utilizing this straight edge here. And typically what I'll do on one end, I'm just going to zoom the camera over here, pan the camera over, is on the end of my table right here, I'm going to place a clamp. And the clamp that I use is just a standard woodworking clamp, like this one, and just pin down the one edge so it won't walk away from me. So just one end pinned, and that's really all I worry about. Now, the scrap of leather that's about to fall on the floor will be used for little pouches or something else. I'm just establishing a straight line right now. This is going to wind up giving me a perfect 2-inch strap by utilizing this method. Now if I just swing this out of the way, this is a perfect 2-inch piece, and I'll cut it to length in a little while. Now what I want to do is remove that clamp. Now I need 4 pieces rather, to make 2 straps. Let's just scoot this height up a little bit, and I'm going to leave just a touch of leather left. Let's pin this side down again, just a touch, just a smidge on this side. That way I don't have to worry about if the hide has gone a little wavy or something like that, typically on the softer leathers it may walk a little bit. I don't have to worry about establishing a straight line or using the old line. I'm just going to reestablish one. You don't have to do it this way. That's just my method. As wasteful as that may be, it's not really that wasteful, to be honest with you. But it saves a lot of time in the long run, in my opinion anyway. So I'm just going to swing that back there, pull my hide again, just let it relax a little bit. Don't want to be stretching it. Just gonna move my clamp a little bit, and then we're going to make 2 more, and then we'll cut these to length. That does happen a little bit once in a while. That's no big deal. It didn't hurt anything. The sharper your rotary cutter is, the better. I replace my blades all the time. I get just some non-name brand ones off Amazon. Okay, just gonna sweep off these little pieces of dust here. Okay, now that we have the 4 pieces cut for our straps, we need to establish the length. So the math on these straps is 1.5 inches. That's basically the key. So whatever size strap you need, you're going to add 1.5 inches to the other piece. So in this particular case, we're going to wind up with about a 29.5 or a 30-inch strap. So piece A is going to be 30.5 and piece B is going to be 32 inches. So I'm just going to utilize my straight edge again. That's already on the table here, and I'm going to put it to the grain side down because it's easier to move on my table. You don't have to do it that way. And then it doesn't really matter where I'm going to be. I know this is plenty long enough, so I'm not really worried about the overall length, or wasting any rather. And then take another, this is just a quilting ruler, and I'm going to butt it against my straight edge here, and then I'm going to establish a perpendicular line, a perfectly 90-degree line. Toss that little piece of rim out of the way, and now I'll put this right to the edge, let this back up where it needs to go. Let me scoop this down out of the way here. Make sure we can still see what's going on. Okay. So I'm going to cut this one at 30.5 inches. All I do is I just butt the leather strap against my straight edge, put the other plastic ruler against the straight edge, and then I'm just going to move this out of the way. And this is perfectly at 90 degrees. Take my rotary cutter and just cut that piece off. Okay, let's do that again 3 more times. So again, just put your strap against your straight edge, the ruler against the straight edge, pull your straight edge out of the way, and then just cut that piece off. And then we're going to make this one at 30.5 inches. My ruler out of the way. Alright, those are done. The next 2 are going to be cut at 32 inches. Plenty of length there, so I don't worry about that. this is actually really straight already on that end, so I won't worry about that. "32 inches. Like this, make sure everything's nice and straight. You take your time doing this part and get all your dimensions right. Everything's going to come out perfect. 32. I cut another one at 32. Guess that looks straight too already. Luck out or what? Not quite. I'm just going to trim this. Trim this off. 20 in length. This isn't, I apologize for the ambient noise. This is not really a studio for sound. This is our studio is in a commercial area with lots of construction and things going on. So you'll hear just things going, in the background. It kind of is what it is. Okay, so you can see there's 1.5 inches difference between the two. So this is going to be a pair. Okay. So the next step, what we're going to do is run over to the bell skiver and we're going to skive these straps down thin, the whole length. It's a tricky process, but very doable. So we're going to make sure our skiver is nice and sharp. Our bell knife is nice and sharp on our skiver rather, and we're going to skive these pieces, the entire length of those 4 pieces, down to about 2 ounces. Okay, the next order of operation is skiving the leather down. For me, this is going to be too thick. This 4 ounces is going to wind up to be way too thick for the strap that we're going for. So this would wind up to be about 7 ounces if I left it this way. The problem with it is that once you double this up, you could skive the end here, but once you double this up, you wind up with kind of a bulby effect at the end, and that's not what I want. So we're going to thin this all the way down to about 2.5 ounces. And first order of operation on the skiver is just to make sure that the amount of skive is going to be correct. So we're just going to run a little test to see where we're at. So this is set to be to skive this right at just under 2 ounces, which is going to be perfect. So that's what I'm going to do. This is not going to be a skiving video or how to use this machine, but we will have a comprehensive video on skivers, and that will be coming out soon. So be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can stay updated on all of our future videos. Okay. So the first thing that I do is on anything I'm skiving is I always skive the short edges first, and that's what I'm going to do right now. Now I just want to make sure my back gauge here, basically this is a stop, is at least slightly more than half the width of the entire strap. That way on my second pass I know I take all of the flesh off the back side. I don't really want to do 3 passes. Sometimes it's necessary, but hopefully not. So here we go. This is a long piece to skive, so hopefully nothing goes crazy. That is a long skive, but it's doable. So I'm going to make sure my bell knife is clear of the material, and then we'll skive the other half of the strap. It's critical to make sure that the bell skiver, or the bell knife rather, is clear of any of the remnant, because this piece, and I'm not gonna, wherever it went, this long piece, sometimes these have a tendency to stick to that football shaped stone, which was what drives your leather across and separates the flesh side from the grain side, will get wrapped around that thing and it will ruin your project. So you want to make sure your bell knife is clear. Like I said, I'm going to go into great detail on a skiving only video, and that's coming up very soon. I just missed one little edge right here, and that's not going to be a problem. I'm just going to catch it, put this right back in the skiver and skive it again. I don't think it's going to be an issue. Not really a recommended process, but okay, so we're going to try this. Make sure my knife is clear. Okay, so I'm going to show you one more strap, and then we'll kind of go off camera, finish up the rest, and we'll move on to the next process. I must put a disclaimer out there. If for any reason you need to reach underneath your skiver and into the bell knife, that you wear a Kevlar glove. Do not do it with your bare hands, period. Even if you're confident that you won't cut yourself. You'll see me do it, but don't follow my lead. Always wear a cut-proof glove or a Kevlar glove when reaching underneath your machine. That's all I'm going to say about that. I'm not reaching anywhere near the bell knife, and I'm confident that I won't do anything, but it's hard to say what others will do, or what others will say that I'm not being safe. So that's just my disclaimer. Back on the table here, we're going to utilize the large straight edge again, and this time just putting the leather right back against the straight edge. Now we want to establish a center line. Basically this is going to be for the double-sided tape, You could use glue, you could use double-sided tape, you can use whatever kind of adhesive you want. You could even use contact cement if you'd like. For us, the easiest and fastest way to fold over these edges to the center, and that's exactly what we're going to do, is I always establish a straight line with a Sharpie marker so I know where to put the tape approximately. And in these instances, we're going to keep the tape short of the end by about, I don't know, about 1.5 inches on both ends. So we'll go ahead and add the tape to all 4 pieces, and then on either end of 2 of the pieces we'll make a 1/2 inch mark. That's going to be the seam allowances to stitch the strap together, and then we'll run over to the sewing machine and get that done, and then we'll be underway with the rest of the construction. But right now I'm just going to establish the center lines with a 1-inch ruler. So this is 2 inches wide, so I just use a 1-inch ruler. I just drop it on the piece there, and then I just slide it all the way against the straight edge, and then I know it's grabbed the leather, and so now it's pretty parallel to the yellow straight edge here. So I'm just going to establish a little line with the Sharpie marker, and then I'm going to run double-sided tape from about an inch or so away, all the way in the center on all 4 pieces. Okay. I'll take my ruler again. You don't have to do it this way, but I like to be as precise as possible to keep everything nice and consistent. And now we're going to repeat that same step 4 times. You only need to mark the seam allowances on 2 of the straps, obviously, or you don't have to at all. So these 2 are going to be a pair. I actually buy this double-sided tape. This is 1/2 inch double-sided tape from Amazon, and I'll try to post a link to the product in the product or the video description below. So if you're interested in that, on which tape I use. This one still has a little bit of the spine left in there. I don't like that. I want to go get rid of that real quick. So I'm going to go skive this off, and I'll be right back. Okay, now that I have all the tape done, we'll run out to the workbench, glue up place a little glue on both grain sides just for some temporary adhesion, and then we're going to run a stitch on just one side of the seam allowance here on the one strap. Okay. So what we're going to do is just take a little bit of adhesive for some temporary bonding, and I'm just going to place some of this contact cement on the grain side. This will be well within the seam allowance, so it won't matter. And it's just temporary to hold everything together in place until I stitch it. If you want to use clips or binder clips or whatever, or nothing, that's totally up to you. I like to use the contact cement glue. Okay, so now we're going to run over to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch 2 lines across there, and then we'll continue on with the rest of the construction. Okay, so now we're just going to simply run 2 lines of stitching. So I'll clean up these threads here a little bit. Now, where I temporarily glued it together, I'm going to pry these 2 pieces back apart. Spread the 2 straps apart. I'm going to take a scratch awl, because I don't have any fingernails, and I'm going to peel back just a little bit of the double-sided tape, just to, a couple inches or so. Now I'm going to take some more of my contact cement. I'm going to add some adhesive on both sides of this 1/2 inch seam. spread the seam out a little bit, and then I'm going to press down in the middle, right in the middle of that seam, and press it flat. And roll this flat, or you can use a hammer and hammer it flat. That works really well. As a matter of fact, I think we'll do that, and then you wind up with a really clean seam on this side, but that's entirely temporary. So this is just the first part of making this strap here. So now what I'd like to do is I have a tool. So now what I'd like to do is take this Tandy craft tool. It's basically like a little emery board. You could use an X-Acto knife, or you don't have to do anything. And I'm just going to rough up the grain side of this leather right here, and that just gives it a kind of a bonding vehicle. It just gives it a little bit of a tooth, gives it an opportunity to bond a little easier and a little better. Something for the adhesive to stick to, basically. So I'm just going to add a little bit of contact cement right there. Get a couple of binder clips ready. And a pair of scissors. I need some scissors. I don't know if you can see it or not, but sometimes the leather will stretch a little bit, and you'll wind up with these little extra wings. I just cut those back, just kind of notch them back a little bit into the strap. Just cut the edges off. You don't have to do that, especially when you start folding it over. Then you have extra material there, and it doesn't want to lay real nice. So I'm going to start here right in the seam, and I'm going to lay this over to that drawn line, that 1-inch line. And then on either side of the seam, just start folding this over. Just start folding that strap over. I'm going to put a little clamp right here in the middle. And then I'm going to fold the other side over to meet up with the side we just did. And you should wind up with something like that. Now I'm going to peel this one side all the way off till about 2 or 3 inches to the end. And then I'm going to fold over the leather on both sides to the center, all the way down on both sides. I like to go a little bit ahead of myself, ahead of these fingers, and start folding it over just to see where I'm at. Not stretching anything, just laying it right in place, right before the line, not over the line, just right before it, so you can still just see it. Okay, now we'll fold in the other side, just going ahead of myself a little bit, and then coming back is a good technique that I like to use. Fold it down, meet there, and then walk it back. Try to get both of these straps, both of these pieces to the strap fairly close in width, and that will be a lot easier come later once it comes to time to top stitch the strap, that your needle doesn't start falling off or it goes crazy. So you have one side that's too wide, it gets a little bit difficult and wonky, especially if you use an edge guide like I do, and I'll show you that in just a little while. So now that's done, I like to take a little roller. You can use all kinds of different things. I even have a piece of brass here you could roll this out with. You could use a rolling pin. There's lots of things you could use. I actually like to use this because it's really heavy. Okay, I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to do the exact same thing. Okay, now while this is still flat, I'm going to run into the other room and we'll run a piece of double-sided tape, basically the full length of this from end to end. Just makes it a little easier, and then we'll come back around on itself. So you're going to basically put it right side to right side, glue these two pieces together, add a stitch, and then we'll complete the rest of the process. Okay, basically we're going to run a piece of double-sided tape the entire length of this, leaving it short about 2.5 inches on each side. Okay. Now we're going to take this back to the sewing machine. We'll first lay a little dab of contact cement on there, bond these two pieces together and run a stitch, and then we're almost ready to top stitch. Okay, one more dab of contact cement. Right sides together. Now this is the part where if you were wanted to put some captive hardware in here, let's say you wanted to have some swivel snaps. This is obviously not the right size. This is a 3/4 inch, but this is the point where you would slide both of them on the strap now before you stitch this last portion. So they would just be dangling there, and that's exactly what you want. But in this case, we don't have any captive hardware. So we're just going to bond these two pieces together, right sides together, just like this. Make sure it's not twisted. And then to make this a little easier, I'm going to add a couple little clamps here, a couple little clips. And then I'm going to take this back to the sewing machine and run a stitch. And in these cases, I happen to like to match my thread to the substrate as much as possible for construction, because sometimes when you start turning leather around, and especially since it's so thin, that sometimes the stitching may show a little bit. So if you have matching threads, and you kind of mitigate your opportunity for threads from showing. In this case, it probably doesn't matter much. It's just kind of habitual at this point. But we're going to top stitch this in a white and a contrasting color on a different machine. But right now we'll go back to the bench and we'll finish up the gluing and the laying the leather over. We'll bond the two pieces together, and this will be ready to top stitch. I'm going to take out that last little piece there of backing. I'll lay the strap as flat as possible, push my seams down. And roll that as flat as possible. Still need that. Scratch this out for a little bit of help with the adhesion. A little more glue. I'm going to fold up the rest of the one side there, center on the other side. Okay. Now what we're going to do is remove the backing to the double-sided tape that's on the inside, on the folded side now. just take it all the way off. It might stick together and get kind of crazy, but that's okay. And then we're going to find our two seams, and I want to make sure that the seams are wrapped around to the inside. So when I place the strap on the bag, this seam's not going to show. It's going to be on the back side. So if you'll notice, if you grab both sides, indicatively they're both going to be just on top on both ends. Hard to see on this camera, but I'll show you once we're done. But you don't want to leave a little piece of scrap in there, that's for sure. So just figure out where that's gonna wind up at. You want your seams to be pretty much kind of in the corner there on the top. You don't want it wrapped around to the good side. And then you can start laying these together. I like to lay it on the side. This gets a little crazy here because of the tape, but that's okay. I like to kind of lay it on the side like this and then just kind of start joining them together, and they usually just fall right into place, right where it needs to be if you lay it up on its side like this. Okay. Now I can take my roller again, or my piece of brass, or whatever you happen to have, and roll this flat. Make it nice and sharp edges. Right. And now when we top stitch this, I do this a little bit different than other crafters do. There's a million ways you can top stitch this. This is the way that I do it. You certainly don't have to follow my lead, but I'm always going to mark this back about a 1/2 inch, staying away from my seam there. I just happen to have a little jig that I use. This is a little piece of brass with our logo in it, and I'll set it on the edge there, and I'll run a little mark with some Tandy leather marker, and then that's going to be my start point, and then I'm going to run it all the way down to the end to the corresponding mark on this side, and then pull out 6 or 8 inches of thread and snip it off. No back stitching whatsoever. You could come in here and do a box stitch. You could run all the way down, turn the corner, come all the way back, turn the corner again, and end in the same spot. You can back stitch. You can do whatever you want. I tend to like to leave no evidence of back stitching when I'm doing top stitching, so this is just the method that I utilize, and I'm going to show you that right now. Okay, gotta make a few adjustments here. Something happened to the audio, so I am definitely voicing over this portion of the video, so we're gonna make do here. The first thing I'm gonna do is reset the drop-down guide to just over 1/8 of an inch away from the inside presser foot on the machine. I utilize an outside only presser foot on this machine. It just makes it easier for me to get into close proximities, and also closer to closer to the edge of the straps, or whatever the case may be. So I'm going to take my little jig. It's just a little 1/2 inch piece of brass and the Tandy leather marker. And I'm going to make 2 marks. This is going to be the start and stop point of my stitch. I'll mark it on both ends. And so that's going to be the start and stop point for the stitch. Basically, I'm going to bury the needle on that silver line. No back stitching. We're just going to run that stitch all the way down to the other end and bury the needle on the opposite silver line. And then basically once I'm done with the running the stitches, I'll just pull the thread to the back side of the strap, tie it off, and burn the edges, or burn the ends of the thread rather. That way there's no back stitching showing, no kind of unsightly stitching mess going on the front side or the money side of the strap. And it makes for a nice look. You don't have to do it this way. You could certainly start at one end, come around to the end of the strap, turn 90 degrees, stitch across the bottom, and then turn up the opposite direction. I just find that I just don't do it that way. So to each his own. You can do whatever you want. That's just the way I do it. It makes for a very nice, clean looking piece. Like I said, this is my Conso 255 RB-2. The stitch length on this is set to the maximum of 4 SPI. I'm using a 92 bonded nylon. And on this one, I'm going to bury the needle again on the silver mark, run the last stitch, and this strap, besides from pulling the thread to the backside, tying it off, is complete. Sorry about the audio on this portion of the video. Not sure exactly what happened, but I'll try to do better next time. I certainly appreciate you watching the video, and if you like it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you wouldn't mind subscribing to the channel, I would certainly appreciate it. And also hit the notification bell for future videos coming up very soon. The next video we'll be releasing will be a full comprehensive video on the bell skiver. Exactly how to set the machine up, exactly how to sharpen the bell knife, and how to maintain and make adjustments on the fly. It's going to be a good video, probably a long one, but you can skip through the portions that you don't want to watch. And there you have it. Strap's basically complete. No raw edges, very smooth and soft in your hand. No dreaded edge painting, that's the worst. This makes for a really nice looking piece. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.